In this video, we're going to translate the logic of our search process into PHP code. So, first of all, we are going to set the search radius. The search radius is going to be 10 miles. You can change that if you like. So let's define a variable where we're going to store this value. So I'm going to call it search radius. And I'm going to set it to 10 miles for now. Okay. So now we're going to calculate the tolerance for the departure longitude. So the way we did that earlier was by doing this calculation. So we're going to need the latitude for this. Okay, so you're going here for the minimum and maximum for the departure longitude. So we're calculating the tolerance first before we can find the min and max values. So I'm going to call the tolerance for the departure longitude delta longitude departure. Okay, so it's going to be the search radius, which is 10 miles, multiplied by 360 degrees and divided by that number multiplied by the cosine of the latitude. So let's go ahead and put that in our code. So search radius multiplied by 360 divided by 24,901 multiplied by the cosine of the latitude. So our latitude, departure latitude, is stored inside that variable. Okay, so before using the cosine, we will need to convert this angle, which is in degrees, to radians. Okay, so make sure you do that before using the cosine function. So to convert this number to radians, we're going to use a PHP function called degree to radian, like that. Okay. All right, so now we've got our tolerance for the departure longitude. Now we are ready to calculate the minimum longitude and the maximum longitude for the departure. So let's call the minimum one min longitude departure. So that's going to be the departure longitude minus the tolerance. Okay. So in our example here, we had London. So the departure longitude would be the longitude of London minus that tolerance. Okay, that's going to be the minimum one, and then the maximum departure longitude is going to be that plus that. Okay, so let's look for the departure longitude. That was that variable minus our tolerance. Okay, and then the maximum is going to be that plus that. All right, now we will need to check if we are within the right range, because if you remember, we can always fall in extreme cases where the maximum is outside 180 or the minimum is outside minus 180. So you're going to need to accommodate those cases as well. Okay, so once we define the minimum longitude, we will check if the minimum longitude is within range or not. So we're going to check if that minimum is too small, meaning less than minus 180. Okay, so in that case, we're going to change that value. And as we said earlier, if you travel through a circle, traveling 360 degrees, then you get the same value or the same point. All right. And we're going to do the same thing for the maximum. But this time we're going to check if the maximum is actually greater than 180. So in that case, if it's greater, we're going to reduce or remove 360 from this variable. So it's like traveling west, okay? And this one is like traveling east, one whole circle. All right. Now, when we are building our query, we will need to know whether we have cases like this. So to make things easier for us, I'm going to define a couple of variables. I'm going to call them departure longitude out of range. So by default, this is going to be false. And the other one is going to be destination longitude out of range. And we're going to use it when we get to the destination. So how are we going to use these two variables? So when we fall in a situation where we are out of range, then we're going to turn one of these variables to true. And when we are building the query, then we can refer to this variable to know whether we're going to be in the case using a between inside the query or using greater than a certain value and smaller than a certain value. All right. I'm going to do the same thing in the other case. Okay. So now we're done with the departure longitude. We're going to do exactly the same thing for the destination. I'm going to copy the code and just change anything saying departure to destination. All right. So now we're done with the departure longitude and the destination longitude.